Your presence tonight honors us all, to the preservation of this legacy and to a very successful evening.
My father raised a champagne glass and smiled as if he were about to bless the room. Instead, he gutted me in front of 200 guests. "It looks like our family burden is finally moving out," he said into the microphone, his voice warm with the kind of cruelty that only sounds gentle from a distance. "Maybe now she'll learn that Wi-Fi is not a career." Laughter cracked through the ballroom like thin ice giving way. It moved from table to table beneath chandeliers dripping gold light, across white linen and crystal stems, over women in silk and men in tailored jackets. Every face turned toward me. Some smiled because Victor Carter was known for his sharp humor. Some looked away because they knew humiliation when they saw it and did not want to be caught witnessing it. I stood near the service doors with a clipboard pressed against my ribs so tightly it left a hard edge in my skin. I could smell roses from the centerpieces, butter from the plated salmon, and the bitter sting of champagne that somebody had just spilled near my shoes. The whole room glowed. I had never felt smaller. Then Mason made it worse. My younger brother flicked his wrist toward the giant screen behind the stage, and a photo of me flashed across it. I was wearing an old gray hoodie, hair twisted up, arms full of storage boxes, caught mid-step with my face half hidden and exhausted. Under it, in clean white letters, he had written, "When the family freeloader mistakes a laptop for a life." This time the laughter came faster. Louder. A few people even clapped. From the head table, my mother gave a tight little smile, the kind women wear when they are praying a scene will end before it stains the tablecloth. Her fingers curled around her napkin. She did not stop him. She did not stop any of it. I felt heat climb my throat, hot and choking, but I did not cry. Not there. Not for them. Because tucked inside the folder under my arm was the emergency permit extension that had saved this gala from being shut down 3 hours earlier. The liquor authorization had nearly expired. The insurance rider had been filed wrong. The floral vendor had threatened to walk after a missed payment. Mason did not know. My father did not know. My mother did not know. They only knew the version of me they had repeated so often it had hardened into family scripture. Naomi stays in her room, Naomi works on her computer, Naomi contributes nothing, Naomi is the weight we carry. The room kept laughing, but something inside me went terribly still. I looked at my father standing under the chandelier light, flushed with triumph, soaking in the applause like a man accepting an award. He truly believed this moment made him powerful. Across the room, Mason was already posting the clip to his social accounts, grinning with that restless, hungry delight of someone who mistakes public cruelty for charisma. My mother glanced at me once, just once, and in her eyes I saw it clearly. Not guilt. Not yet. Only fear that I might ruin the evening by speaking. So I did the one thing none of them expected. I lowered my gaze. I unlocked my phone. And I saved everything. The video of my father's toast, the photo on the screen, the caption, the comments piling up in real time, dead weight, about time, she should be ashamed. My thumb moved calmly, almost gracefully, while my pulse hammered like fists against a locked door. If anyone noticed, they thought I was embarrassed. They thought I was shrinking. But I was documenting. When the band resumed and the room began to turn away from me, relieved that the entertainment had ended, I stepped through the service corridor and into the cooler dark behind the ballroom. The noise dulled behind the swinging doors. Stainless steel counters reflected a pale, warped version of my face. For one long second, I braced both hands on a prep table and let the hurt hit me full force. It was not new pain. That was the worst part. It was old pain, finally given a microphone. I walked upstairs after midnight, past framed family portraits and polished banisters, into the bedroom they all called mine as if it were proof I had never become an adult. I packed one suitcase. Black dress. Laptop. Folder. Charger. The small velvet box my grandmother had once pressed into my hand and told me to keep safe. Downstairs, the party was still breathing, still glowing, still celebrating my disgrace. I rolled my suitcase through the front hall without a sound. No one came after me. No one noticed the door open. No one noticed the door close. They thought they had finally gotten rid of the burden. What they did not understand was far more dangerous. The woman leaving that house was the one who had been holding it together. By 8 the next morning, I was no longer the family burden. I was the silence they did not yet know how to survive. My new apartment sat above a narrow antique store on a quiet street in Savannah, where the windows rattled when delivery trucks passed and the stairwell smelled faintly of old wood, dust, and lemon polish. It was small, imperfect, and mine. Morning light poured across the bare floorboards in long pale strips, touching the single suitcase I had left unopened by the wall. For the first time in years, no one was moving in the next room. No one was sighing outside my door. No one was telling a story about me while I was still alive enough to hear it. I stood barefoot in the kitchen with a chipped ceramic mug in my hands and watched the coffee steam curl upward like something newly freed. My phone had 13 missed calls. 9 from my mother. 3 from Mason. 1 from my father. There were messages too, stacked one over another like debris after a storm. Come back so we can talk, you embarrassed your father by leaving, this is getting blown out of proportion, answer me now. I did not open any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop. The screen lit my face in the stillness, and with it came the version of me my family had never bothered to imagine. Not lazy. Not hidden. Not lost. My calendar was color-coded with client meetings in Atlanta, emergency brand reviews, legal coordination calls, and crisis response deadlines. My inbox held messages from executives, attorneys, and public relations teams who paid me very well to solve the kind of messes that could swallow a reputation in one weekend. I was not a woman wasting her life behind a screen. I was a crisis strategist. I cleaned up disasters for people who had more money than wisdom and more ego than discipline. And for 3 years, I had been doing the same work for free at home. I pulled up the Carter Events folder. There it was. Every hidden fracture. Every late payment I had quietly covered before a vendor could complain. Every ugly review I had softened or buried before it reached the wrong eyes. Every contract Mason had skimmed and signed without reading. Every permit renewal my father had forgotten until the last possible second. Every spreadsheet my mother said looked too complicated for her, then handed to me with a tight smile and a tired little, "You are so good at this stuff, sweetheart." Sweetheart when they needed something, freeloader when they had an audience. I clicked through the accounts with mechanical calm. Insurance. Vendor payments. Payroll reminders. Seasonal licenses. Deposit schedules. The entire business lay spread before me like a body I had kept alive with pressure on a wound no one else would acknowledge. If I lifted my hand, the bleeding would start. A memory rose sharp and sudden. My grandmother Evelyn sitting in her sunroom with a wool blanket over her knees, her hands thin and blue-veined but steady around a teacup. She had watched me work one afternoon while I balanced insurance forms, medication refill reminders, and a floral invoice all at once. She had not praised me in the shallow way the others did when they wanted access. She had just looked at me for a long moment and said, "They think quiet means weak. Quiet only means you waste no energy announcing your strength." At the time, I had smiled. I had not known the sentence would one day feel like prophecy. By noon, the first real cracks appeared. An automated email alerted me that the company liability policy required confirmation from the primary administrator. Another notice warned that the temporary event storage permit for the carriage house would lapse without updated documents. Also then came a vendor email asking about an overdue balance Mason had promised was handled. It was not handled. I knew because I had once moved money from my own account to cover the last emergency and had never been repaid. I leaned back in my chair and let the truth settle fully into my bones. They had mocked the very hands holding up their roof. Outside, church bells rang somewhere over the city, slow and measured. I thought of my father still glowing from last night, still certain he had won. I thought of Mason replaying the video, maybe laughing at the comments. I thought of my mother, pacing now, sensing something had shifted but not yet daring to name it. My cursor hovered over each account, each permission setting, each role attached to my name. This was the difference between revenge and withdrawal. Revenge destroys. Withdrawal reveals what was never standing on its own. One by one, I removed myself. I changed the passwords on the systems tied to my personal credentials. I turned off the automatic payments coming from my bank. I resigned as the primary contact on insurance, permits, and vendor correspondence. I forwarded every personal reimbursement record into a private archive. I backed up every email, every invoice, every proof of labor they had pretended not to see. My phone rang again. Father. I watched his name pulse across the screen until it stopped. A minute later, my mother called. Then Mason. Then Father again. I opened my contacts, scrolled down, and pressed another name. Diana Pierce. My grandmother's attorney. When the receptionist answered, my voice was low, even, almost gentle. This is Naomi Carter, I said. I need to review my grandmother's estate documents today. As I ended the call, I looked around the quiet apartment, at the light on the floor, at the mug cooling beside my hand, at the life waiting to begin the moment I stopped rescuing the old one. For the first time in years, I was not asking what my family would do to me next. I was asking what would happen when I finally let them face themselves without me there to soften the fall. The law office stood on a shaded corner of Savannah, wrapped in old brick and ivy, as if it had been built to protect secrets too heavy for ordinary walls. By the time I stepped through its dark wooden doors, the air outside had already turned thick with afternoon heat, but inside everything felt cool, hushed, deliberate. Even the receptionist lowered her voice when she spoke my name, as though grief and money deserved the same kind of reverence. Diana Pierce greeted me in a charcoal suit, her silver hair pinned neatly back, her expression as sharp as cut glass. She had been my grandmother Evelyn's attorney for years, and unlike most people in my family, she had never once looked at me as though I were a decorative problem taking up space in the wrong room. She looked at me now the same way she always had. Directly. Respectfully. As if I were someone expected to understand the weight of what came next. We sat in her office beside a tall window overlooking the square. Sunlight filtered through live oaks and painted the carpet with restless shadows. Diana placed a thick folder on the desk between us, then another, then another. Cream paper. Blue tabs. Legal seals. My name appeared more than once. For a moment, I just stared. I thought everything went to my father, I said quietly. Diana folded her hands. Your father has been allowed to behave as if that were true. That is not the same as it being true. Something cold moved through me. She opened the first file and slid it forward. The Evelyn Hart Living Trust. My grandmother's signature curved across the bottom of the page in the elegant hand I knew by heart. Beneath it were amendments, addendums, letters of instruction, property schedules. Diana guided me through them line by line, her voice steady, precise, leaving no room for confusion. The Carter house had never belonged outright to my father. Not fully. Not legally. The estate, the main residence, the carriage house used for event storage, even part of the grounds where Carter events hosted private functions all sat inside my grandmother's trust. My father and mother had been granted a conditional right of residence and a conditional benefit of use. Conditional. The word landed in me with the force of a gavel. I swallowed hard. Conditional on what? Maintenance of the property. Responsible financial conduct. No misuse of trust assets. And no hostile conduct toward the successor trustee. I looked up. Diana met my eyes. You, Naomi. Evelyn named you successor trustee. For a second the room disappeared. I heard nothing but the blood rushing in my ears. All those years of being spoken over, dismissed, laughed at, ordered to fix what I was never publicly allowed to understand. All those years of my father walking through that house like a king in borrowed robes. My mother arranging flowers in rooms she never paid to protect. Mason swaggering through hallways he assumed were part of his inheritance. And through it all, my grandmother had known. A strange ache rose in my throat, not triumph exactly, but something deeper, sadder, more luminous. She had seen me. Not as useful. Not as convenient. Seen. Diana continued, and the facts became even sharper. There was a specific conduct clause. If the successor trustee were harassed, publicly humiliated, defamed, or intentionally undermined by any beneficiary residing on trust property, that successor trustee had authority to revoke favorable occupancy terms and move all future communication through counsel. My father's speech at the gala. Mason's public post. The string of mocking comments left standing overnight. It all mattered now. Not emotionally. Legally. I let out a slow breath and leaned back in my chair. They mocked me out of a house they do not legally own, I said. Yes, Diana answered. And they did it while depending on you more than they appear to understand. She opened another file. This one was uglier. Financial exposure. Delayed vendor obligations. Lapses in compliance. Informal transfers. Insurance vulnerabilities. A timeline of risks I had quietly managed over the last several years without ever naming them as crises. Looking at it assembled so plainly made me almost sick. I had not merely helped my family. I had been shielding them from collapse. A memory struck me with painful clarity. My grandmother in bed during her final winter, voice weakened but eyes still bright, her fingers pressing a small velvet box into my hand. One day, she had whispered, "You will need proof that love and trust are not the same thing. Keep what I give you. Use it when the noise becomes unbearable." That box was now in my bag beside my chair. My father had called 19 times by then. My mother had switched from commands to pleas. Mason had sent a message full of rage, then another pretending casual confusion, then another asking if I had touched the business accounts. I turned the phone face down. What happens if I do nothing? I asked. Diana did not hesitate. Then they continue using trust property, your labor, and your silence as though all three belonged to them. The truth of it was so clean it almost hurt. I looked down at the final page Diana placed before me. A formal notice. Demand to remove defamatory content. Revocation of informal access. Transfer of all trust-related communication to legal counsel. Review of occupancy rights. It was not dramatic. It was worse for them than drama. It was real. My hand hovered over the pen. I thought of the ballroom. The laughter. My father smiling into the microphone as if my humiliation were a family joke polished for public use. I thought of my mother watching and saying nothing. I thought of Mason feeding the moment into the glowing mouth of the internet, hungry for strangers to help him shame me. Then I thought of my grandmother, quiet and watchful, leaving power in the hands she believed would not abuse it. When I signed, my name came out smooth and certain. Diana gathered the papers and rose to have them filed. Before she reached the door, my phone began vibrating again against the desk, then again, frantic now, relentless. Father. Mother. Mason. Father again. I did not reach for it. For the first time in my life, they were no longer calling the daughter they had trained to absorb the blow. They were calling the woman who now held the door. The papers were delivered at 9:12 in the morning. By 9:27, my father called for the 7th time. By 10:03, my mother had left 3 voicemails that began with hurt and ended with panic. By 10:49, Mason stopped pretending he did not understand what was happening and sent the first message that told the truth. What did you do? I was sitting by the tall front window of my apartment, the afternoon sun warming the old wood floor, when I read it. Outside, Savannah moved at its usual unhurried pace. A woman walked a golden dog past the antique store below. A delivery truck rattled over the bricks. Somewhere down the block, a church bell rang once, hollow and clear. The city sounded calm. My family did not. My phone kept lighting up like it had a fever. Father, mother, Mason, father again. Then a voicemail from my mother. Her voice came through shaky, breathless, wrapped in the kind of trembling softness she only used when control was slipping through her fingers. Naomi, please answer me. Your father is upset, Mason is making everything worse, and this has gone too far. We can talk about this privately. There is no reason to involve lawyers. Family does not do this to family. I listened to that line twice. Family does not do this to family. Not when they humiliate a daughter under crystal chandeliers, not when they turn her pain into a joke and beam it across a ballroom wall, not when they spend years using her labor with one hand and stripping her dignity with the other. But suddenly lawyers were the cruelty. I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling until the anger passed cleanly through me and left something colder behind. Not hatred. Clarity. At 11:16, Diana emailed to confirm that the notices had been received and acknowledged. At 11:32, another email arrived, this time from a floral supplier I recognized instantly. The subject line was sharp enough to cut. Outstanding balance and event hold. I opened it slowly. They had not been paid for 2 previous weddings. Mason had promised them a transfer that never came. The supplier was freezing all future deliveries until the balance cleared. 10 minutes later a second message came in from the liability insurer, requesting immediate contact regarding updated trust property occupancy and event exposure. Then a third. A sponsor from the gala wanted assurance that the charity funds and venue arrangements had not been misrepresented. The whole structure was beginning to groan. I should have felt vindicated. Instead I felt something more complicated, a deep bone-tired sadness that made my chest ache. I had spent so long preventing consequences that seeing them arrive almost felt unnatural, like watching gravity finally remember a house built on air. By noon, Mason's messages had turned savage. Answer me, you cannot lock us out like this. Dad says you are bluffing. If you destroy this business, you are dead to us. I almost laughed at that. Dead to us. As if exile had not been their favorite weapon for years. As if they had not been banishing me in small daily ways long before I ever packed a suitcase. Then my father sent a voicemail. His voice was no longer polished for public use. It came rough, loud, stripped of charm. Naomi, pick up the damn phone. You have embarrassed this family enough. Whatever game you think you are playing ends now. You will reverse this today. Do you hear me? Today. Even now, he spoke like a man barking orders at gravity. An hour later, the tone changed. The next voicemail was quieter. Dangerous in a different way. Naomi, let us be reasonable. If something in those documents upset you, we can discuss it. Your mother is beside herself. Mason is under stress. You know how emotional he gets. We all said things at the gala that maybe did not come out right. Maybe did not come out right. The cruelty of people like my father was not only in what they did. It was in how swiftly they tried to sand down reality once consequences arrived. Public humiliation became a misunderstanding. Defamation became family tension. Years of exploitation became an unfortunate tone problem. At 2:15 in the afternoon, I got a text from a number I did not know. It was from Lila, one of the former event assistants who had quit last autumn without warning. I heard what happened, it read. For what it is worth, everybody in that house knew you were the one keeping things alive. Victor used to brag about it when you were not around. Said you were useful because you never asked for credit. I am sorry I never told you. I read the message 3 times. Useful because you never asked for credit. The words landed with a strange softness, almost more painful than the insults. Because there it was. The secret truth beneath the family myth. They had never really believed I was incapable. That lie had simply been convenient. It let them diminish me while feeding off what I gave. It kept me tired, apologetic, and easy to control. By late afternoon, the story had begun leaking beyond our walls. A woman from the gala committee removed her laughing reaction from Mason's post. A man who had commented finally, "She's out," wrote a stiff little message to my mother about hoping the family matter resolved itself respectfully. Someone else deleted their reply altogether. The crowd could feel the weather shifting, even if they did not yet know the full forecast. And then my mother called again. This time, when I sent her to voicemail, she cried almost immediately. "Naomi, please. We cannot lose the house. Your father is not handling this well, Mason is furious, and people are asking questions. Please call me. We can fix this. We can fix all of it. Not we miss you, not we were wrong, not I should have stopped him. We cannot lose the house." I closed my eyes. There it was. Bare. Undressed. The truest sentence she had spoken to me in years. They did not fear losing me, they feared losing what my silence had protected. The pain of that realization moved through me slowly, like winter water. But beneath it, something steadier rose. Self-respect. Late, hard-won. And clean. That evening Diana called and suggested a formal meeting at her office. All parties present. Legal counsel in the room. No shouting without witnesses. No revision of history without paper to contradict it. I agreed. After the call, I opened the black leather folder I had bought on my walk home. Into it I placed every screenshot from the gala. Every cruel caption. Every voicemail. Copies of vendor payments from my account. Insurance records. Permit renewals. Contracts Mason never read. Late notices I had intercepted before they became disasters. Piece by piece, I built the truth into something that could sit on a table and refuse to be talked over. Outside, night gathered slowly over Savannah. Window by window, the buildings across the street glowed amber in the dark. I could see my own reflection in the glass now, faint but steady, a woman sitting upright with both hands on the evidence of her own life. For the first time I was not preparing to defend my worth. I was preparing to prove that they had known it all along. The conference room at Diana Pierce's office was too cold, too bright, too honest for performance. No chandeliers. No string quartet. No polished crowd waiting to laugh on cue. Just a long mahogany table, a pitcher of water sweating into a ring on a tray, and 4 people who had finally run out of places to hide. My father arrived first, wearing a navy suit and the expression of a man who still believed anger was authority. My mother came in behind him, pale and brittle, clutching her handbag with both hands as if it might keep her from coming apart. Mason entered last, restless and sharp-edged, jaw tight, eyes burning with the kind of panic that had not yet admitted it was fear. I was already seated when they walked in. For a moment, none of them spoke. I watched the realization move across my father's face in small, unwilling stages. The straightness of my back. The folder in front of me. Diana at my side. The absence of apology in my eyes. He had seen me hurt before. He had seen me silent before. He had never seen me like this. He sat down hard and looked at Diana instead of me. "This is absurd," he said. "Whatever misunderstanding has happened here, we are not turning a private family disagreement into a legal spectacle." Diana folded her hands. "Then you should not have made it public at a gala." The words landed like a clean blade. Mason gave a humorless laugh and leaned back in his chair, but I saw the pulse hammering in his neck. My mother kept staring at me, her eyes glassy and searching, as though she might still find the daughter who would soften at the sight of tears. My father tried first. "Naomi," he said, lowering his voice into that careful, paternal tone he used when he wanted to sound reasonable after being cruel, "you have always been emotional. I understand that your feelings were hurt. But this has gone too far. Your grandmother would be horrified to see you treating your own family this way." That was the moment something final went quiet inside me. I opened the black folder. The first item I slid across the table was a printed still image from the gala. My father at the microphone, smiling. The caption beneath it, transcribed exactly. Family burden. Finally moving out. Wi-Fi is not a career. Then came the screenshot of Mason's post on the ballroom screen. Then the comments. Then the clipped reactions. Then the timestamps. I said nothing while they looked. Mason shifted first. That was a joke. I turned to him. A joke needs consent to be funny. He opened his mouth again, but nothing came out. Next, I placed copies of the insurance renewals in front of my father. The event permits. The vendor confirmations. The overdue warnings. The emergency extension that had saved the gala itself from being shut down. Then the personal bank transfers, highlighted line by line, showing the money I had used to cover shortages, late balances, and near disasters over 3 years. My mother blinked at the pages as if they had arrived in a language she had never learned. You never told us, she whispered. I looked at her steadily. You never asked. Her face crumpled a little then, but not with full guilt. With the dawning horror of comprehension. Not of what I had felt. Of what I had done. Of how much of their comfort had been built on labor they had chosen not to see because acknowledging it would have required gratitude. My father pushed the papers away as if they offended him. If you helped with a few things, that does not give you the right to try to throw your parents out of their home. Diana slid the trust documents forward before I could answer. It is not your home in the absolute legal sense, Mr. Carter, she said calmly. The residence and associated structures remain trust property under the Evelyn Hart Living Trust. Ms. Naomi Carter is the named successor trustee. Your occupancy is conditional. So is your use of the carriage house and event facilities. For the first time, my father lost all color. He stared at the papers, then at me, then back at the papers as if legal language might rearrange itself out of embarrassment. Mason leaned forward so quickly his chair scraped the floor. My mother whispered, no, under her breath, the word thin and stunned. Diana continued with merciless precision. Public harassment of the successor trustee. Defamation. Hostile conduct on trust property. Exposure of trust assets to reputational and financial risk. Violation of benefit conditions. Notice properly served. Response period active. Every sentence tightened the room. My father recovered enough to try fury again. Your grandmother would never have wanted this. I spoke then, my voice low and even. My grandmother wanted someone she trusted to protect what she built. The room went still. I reached into my bag and took out the small velvet box she had given me in her final winter. Inside was a folded handwritten note, softened at the edges from being opened too many times. I did not hand it over. I only read the one line that mattered. When they are loud, choose what is true over who is familiar. My mother broke first. The tears came hard and fast, spilling over the careful face she had spent years arranging for other people. Naomi, please, she said. We made mistakes. We said awful things. But we are still your family. Still your family. There are sentences that sound holy until you lay them beside behavior. I looked at her and felt the ache of who I had once been, the daughter who would have accepted half an apology because she was starving for any scrap of love. That woman was not dead. She was simply no longer in charge. You stood there and watched, I said. You watched him humiliate me. You watched Mason turn me into a joke. You watched it happen because it was easier than stopping it. Family is not what people call themselves while they are hurting you. Family is what they protect. My father slammed his palm against the table. Enough. Diana did not flinch. Actually, Mr. Carter, you will want to be very careful what happens next. Even Mason had gone quiet by then. Not softened. Not changed. Just cornered. He looked smaller without an audience. Younger. Meaner in a more pathetic way. "What do you want?" he muttered, eyes fixed on the table. Finally. I folded my hands in front of me. "I want all defamatory content removed immediately. I want no further direct contact outside legal channels regarding the trust or the property. I want the residence vacated within the required period. And I want every vendor, insurer, and event partner informed that I am no longer acting as an unacknowledged backstop for your negligence." My father stared at me like I had become a stranger. Maybe I had. He tried one last time, but the arrogance had drained out of him now, leaving only desperation in an expensive suit. "Naomi," he said, and this time my name sounded unfamiliar in his mouth, "if you do this, there is no going back." I held his gaze. I know. That was the true center of it. Not the house. Not the money. Not even the trust. The irreversible thing was that I had finally seen them clearly and refused to look away. The meeting ended without reconciliation. Diana outlined the next legal steps. My mother wept in silence. Mason gathered his papers with shaking hands. My father stood slowly, as if the room itself had grown heavier around him. None of them knew how to leave with dignity, so they left with the only thing they had left. Silence. 32 days later, the Carter house stood empty. I did not move back in. The first morning I walked through it alone, the rooms echoed differently. Not haunted. Released. Sunlight fell through the tall windows and touched the old floors in long golden bands. The ballroom where my father had once raised a glass against me was still. No laughter. No music. No cruelty dressed as celebration. I opened the windows and let fresh air pour in. Within months, I began converting part of the property into the Evelyn Hart Center, a small fellowship and mentoring space for women rebuilding their professional lives after divorce, caregiving, job loss, or emotional collapse. A place for women who had been told they were too late, too quiet, too damaged, too difficult, too much, or not enough. A place where skill would not have to beg for recognition. Where silence would not be mistaken for emptiness. Some endings do not sound triumphant when they arrive. They sound like a key turning in a lock that should have been changed years ago. I never got the apology I would have once dreamed of. Not a real one. My father sent a stiff message through Diana months later, full of practical questions and not one word of remorse. My mother mailed back a scarf I had left behind, folded carefully, with no note. Mason never contacted me again. That used to have the power to break me. Now it felt like weather passing over a house built on stronger ground. Because the truth was simple in the end. They did not collapse because I betrayed them. They collapsed because I stopped carrying them while they insulted my strength. And if you have ever been the quiet one in a family that only notices your value when your hands are gone, then you know exactly what that kind of silence costs. Tell me in the comments whether you would have walked away the night of the gala or stayed long enough to face them across the table. And if stories like this one stay with you, where dignity rises, masks fall, and the overlooked person turns out to be the strongest in the room, like and subscribe to Still Waters Payback for the next story.